Okay, we want to welcome you back to Rico Busters. We've got a very interesting show for you today. It's imperative that you stay with us. We've got Danielle Austin here. Danielle has been a victim of CPS corruption here in the state of Michigan. And we've got Ted Visner. Ted is a victims' rights advocate and somebody who is has got some very interesting information that you will not want to miss. Today's topic is going to be dealing with Child Protective Services and their involvement with child trafficking, how this scheme works, and what you can do about it. So if you have a case that's similar, we hope that during the break you'll either pause or go get your paperwork and see what you can do to follow along with us and see if there's some complexities of your case that are similar to that we're going to be going over. We're going to be discussing in this, and feel free to break in here, that the complexities of how the Michigan Supreme Court acts to help to deprive parents of their rights and to give the government more incentive and more inherent power to deprive parents of their rights and to take their kids. We're going to demonstrate that by the appointment of the court of lawyers, of ineffective assistance of counsel, that children are being ripped away from their parents. We're going to be showing how CPS government employees and judges and prosecutors and public defenders and even the paid lawyers are all operating together in a cohesive fashion to operate criminally using color of law and court rules of procedure to conduct the unlawful abduction and trafficking of our children. These are our most valuable resources, as we know, or we should be knowing, because they are the future of this country. So be sure to stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Rico Busters. I want to thank you for coming back with us. Today is our topic of Child Protective Services and the abduction of our kids. This is Danielle Austin. She's had her kids abducted from her in a systematic fashion that we're going to be covering today. Why don't we just get right into you describing your family situation? Tell us how many kids you have, their ages, how many days you've been away from them now and all that.
Okay. Well, I have 3. My oldest is Madison Austin. She is 11. And then I also have Marcus, who is 9, and I have Michael, who is soon to be 5 this month. And my ex and I were going through a separation, and I've always been a stay-at-home mom. Especially with Michael and his problems and special needs that he has. So I didn't have any income coming in. So
for at least 11, 12 years, because you add another, if your oldest is 11 years old, and you add another year on to that for your term of pregnancy, at least for the last dozen years, you have not had a source of income other than through your husband, right?
Right, correct.
And so the and you haven't had work experience in that period of time, and so I can see your situation pretty clearly.
Yes. So it was difficult because we had no money, and I didn't know what I was going to be able to do for them except for to get help through the state, and so ultimately that's what I had to do. I went and applied for all the assistance that I could get, including getting Michael's SSI restarted again. He'd had it previously before, but it's based on parents' income. Mm-hmm. So when it's too high, you get booted out, and that's what had happened. So I needed to reapply for that as well, and I got all the paperwork together and filled it out, and one of the requirements as well was to get a note from the pediatrician.
Well, now let's just get a little bit more background about Michael. From my understanding, Michael has severe food allergies.
Yes.
Michael has recently been diagnosed with autism, but you had that motherly intuition about that to begin with, as well as the food allergies. It's my understanding from our previous conversations that there's a whole lot of Michael's condition that you were very familiar with as his mom and his caretaker on a daily basis, if not an hourly basis, that others weren't so familiar with, and they certainly hadn't documented.
Right.
And so get us a little bit more familiar with these food allergies, and you had mentioned also at Michael's birth, or about the time of his birth, that he went through surgeries, and there was a lot of medical conditions.
Yes. I didn't know at the time that there was anything wrong with Michael, but he was watched very close while I was pregnant with him, but we never caught on or saw anything. So when he was born, he was 6 weeks early, and so he was premature.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out after recovery that the Life Flight team had already arrived in Mount Pleasant to take him to Ann Arbor because he had an imperforated anus and it required immediate attention. So that was the start of it, and since when I finally made it to Ann Arbor, I found out a bunch of other things. He had a heart condition, and he had several holes in his heart. So, there was a lot going on, and he's had 9 surgeries altogether.
Since his birth?
Since his birth.
Up through the age of 4?
Up till the age of almost 3.
3, okay.
Yes.
And then from 3 to 4, he didn't have any surgeries in that time?
No.
Okay. And so, if you, and I know this is sometimes discomforting, but do you feel like elaborating a little bit more about the types of surgeries that he had, and his regurgitating or bringing things back up again, and the types of things that the doctors did to keep that from happening, and how that might affect weight?
Well, with his imperforated anus, that was a major ordeal. Although there wasn't much that needed to be repaired, it was an intensive 14 months that I had to dilate his bottom every single day myself. On top of that, when he was about 4 months old, he started having reflux problems, and it just got more severe and more severe. We went through all kinds of formulas to try to help him with that, but nothing was working. And it was getting to the point where it was scary. He was aspirating consistently, and we had numerous trips to Mount Pleasant Hospital to deal with that. And even at Mount Pleasant Hospital and at the U of M, they couldn't figure out why he was refluxing. And they had him at the U of M in overnight studies, and never caught it. So if they couldn't catch it, they couldn't prove that anything was going on.
What did they eventually do?
Well, eventually I'm on the phone for 2 weeks straight, calling everybody that I can think of to help my son, because it's getting so severe. And ultimately, we had a family outing, and he was gone. He quit breathing. And, at that point...
That was before 1 year old?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So, he was taken back to the U of M. And, of course, the doctors are just, we're so sorry. We know that you've been saying something about this and we could never catch it, but we're going to do something about it now. So they did a Nissen fundoplication, which is a band around the top of the stomach to keep him from refluxing. and then also add a G-tube put in place, so that way he would be fed through his stomach.
So the feeding through the stomach had to come because the reflux, when they put a band around the top of his stomach, it also not only keeps things from coming back up, but it also keeps things from going back down.
Well, not necessarily going down, just more coming back up. That was the biggest concern because of the aspiration.
But with that band on there, could he eat?
Yes.
He could eat. Okay.
Yes, he could eat. At that point, he was still drinking from a bottle. Mm-hmm. But when they decided to put the G-tube in place, he quit eating by mouth. I mean, but you have to understand, this was frightening to him, mm-hmm. because he was choking all the time. It was frightening, and he just didn't want to eat by mouth anymore because of everything that he had been going through.
I understand.
So, that ultimately stopped, and, that was a challenge in itself, but, he had hearing problems. He had tubes placed in, and, his other surgeries were, undescended testicles. He also had a hernia. He does still have one surgery that's remaining that has not been done, and that's his heart surgery. Okay. But it's never been of concern, and the doctors are more than willing to wait for him to get older and stronger before, attempting to do that.
So you eventually brought him to a pediatrician, and I know we'll be taking a break here in just a moment, but I'd like to and then we'll also talk when we come back about your living conditions and the way things were at home at the time, and you being without money, where your husband was at the time, and things like that. But you ultimately had brought your child at the age of 4, which was this is being recorded here in April of 2015. It was about 9 months ago or so, mm-hmm. that you had taken your child to the in July, right? Yes. To the pediatrician, and from that point, CPS started getting involved, and at that point, things started rolling very rapidly downhill for you. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. That's right.
Well, we will be right back in just a moment to see what those details are, because we want our audience to know that this is not the first time I've heard this kind of story about and the basis for how our government is taking kids away from parents. So we'll be right back. Hi, and thank you for coming back with us here. We are talking with Dani Austin about CPS abuses, about the government taking kids away and trafficking these kids to other people, and who are getting paid by the government to take care of other people's kids, and basically it's a condition that has been raised with so many families that I've heard about, where parents go for help from the government and they end up getting their kids taken away from them, and with the money and support for the kids going to other people, when the laws are all stating that the ones that are supposed to be the kids are supposed to be with are the parents, are the families, and certainly not with strangers and people who are in it for a financial package that comes from the government. Where we left off, Dani was talking about the conditions of her kids. She's got one that's 12 now, probably.
11.
She's still 11. 11, 9, and 5. And Michael has a condition that has been with him since birth, demanding really constant attention, and in all different areas. And so where we left off last, you had described that your youngest son of 3, Michael, here in Isabella County of Michigan, that he had was born with allergies, and what eventually was diagnosed as autism.
Mm-hmm.
And that just scratches the surface of the issues that he was going through since birth. And that I wanted to kind of get into not so much the medical now, but the living conditions. And you were a stay-home mom for 11 years or 12 years when you consider your first pregnancy. This was your job, taking care of your children. And so, not only when CPS took your kids, they also took your job, and so this has devastated your family, it devastated your life, and certainly has changed the lives of all of your kids. What was the living conditions like when
well,
this...
like I said, my ex and I were in the middle of separation, and things were chaotic and crazy. I didn't have any money. And so, we were already running out of food and things that we needed, and it was hard to keep up with Michael's needs. A lot of, what we were doing, we were paying out of pocket because, insurance didn't cover very many things, and one of the primary things that they stopped taking care of was his food supply. His bags and formula. I got a letter from the insurance company saying that they knew it was a necessity, but that they weren't going to pay for it anymore.
Wow.
So the food and everything else, I was freaking out, trying to figure out, how, to juggle all of this and, and still take care of my children. And Michael, at the time, was having pooping issues, bowel issues, and and it was getting to the point where it needed attention. But at the time, we didn't have insurance, and
we're talking about last July.
Yes, last July,
2014. Okay.
So I had already been in contact with Dr. Bordawalla, about his problems, but I still needed to go to the state, so I went to the state and I got all the assistance that I could possibly pull, to be able to take care of my children. So,
what about your house? You were living in...
Yeah, well, the other problem was that the house was just falling apart. The plumbing wasn't working in the kitchen, and
this is the trailer that you're renting.
Yes, and
so you had a landlord.
Yes.
That's supposed to be taking care of this. You were a little behind on your rent at the same time.
Well, right, because I didn't have any money, so it was really becoming an issue. But the ceiling in the bathroom had caved in due to hot water leak. So there was so many different things going on. It was completely awful. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was.
You needed help.
Yes.
And so who do you go for help? You're tapping all the resources that you can, and eventually, you go to the doctor. Doctor can't supply everything. You go into the government, and so
I got all the necessary paperwork and got everything together.
Mm-hmm.
Michael still hadn't seen Dr. Bordawalla because, like I said, I didn't have insurance. And so we got all of that situated where, we did. And I went to Dr. Bordawalla, too, because I was applying for cash assistance as well, to be able to stay at home with Michael.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And
you can't be leaving him alone when he needs somebody there to go work a job.
Right. So, she did approve the paperwork, but her concerns, for Michael's weight loss because of his bowel issues, she was the one that initiated the call to CPS.
That Dr. Bordawalla?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. The female pediatrician?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that's how that began. And, that was on a Tuesday, and 2 days later I was meeting with CPS in their office, talking about the situation with my son. And
this is around July 20?
Well, this was like July 2nd or 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
So I had another follow-up appointment with Dr. Borwalla the very next week.
Mm-hmm.
And so she saw him, and he had lost 2 more pounds. So, you know, it was really
still
starting
getting
to
the
be...
feeding tube.
Right.
Yeah.
Still
Mm-hmm.
has the feeding tube, still being fed, you know, continuous feeds. But for some reason he was losing weight, and she felt that, you know, it was in his best interest to be hospitalized at the U of M to figure out, you know, what was going on. So, you know, no problem. I mean, we've been here lots of times before.
And and the doctor's just doing what needs to be done by calling CPS, by saying this child needs some help. You know, the doctor doesn't know what's going on at home. You know, so there, as a teacher, I have to do the same thing. You know, if I won't say suspect, but you know, if there's the possibility that there is any negligence or anything going on at home, just to make sure that that I'm covered and that the children are covered. You know, I'm doing a due diligence by making a call, you know, and I'm sure that that's what the doctor's motivation was, just, you know, call CPS, and we got to get a team, you know, involved here to see what we can do about the health of the child. And so, continue, I'm sorry.
So, I took him myself to the U of M, you know, that day that he had seen the doctor.
That's in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, he was there, we were there for 2 weeks. And, you know, with CPS being involved, they did every test imaginable, you know, went back through his entire history. You know, but the only issue that, you know, he had going on was, you know, his bowel issues. So...
Did they ever know what was causing him to lose the weight, or, you know?
No, they really didn't. I mean, you know, with him being autistic, he has severe stomach issues, mm-hmm. and he doesn't process nutrients properly. And then when you have bowel problems on top of that, because a lot of your nutrients are absorbed through the colon as mm-hmm. well. So if you don't have both of those factors working, you just basically have food going in and food going out.
Got it.
So you're not utilizing any of the nutrients that mm-hmm. you've got going on. So that was more, you know, Michael's problem. So they did all of their testing and got everything situated with him. And then by the end of the 2 weeks, they released Michael back to me to be able to go home.
And so U of M had every opportunity... and they took every opportunity to make sure that Michael's needs were taken care of, that all evaluations were done, that they have, U of M, you told me that they have their own CPS.
Yes, I met with him while I was there.
Right.
And you know, they introduced themselves and told me the possibilities that, you know, they could step in as well. You know, when they would be doing their own investigation while he was there. So, you know, I already knew, you know, that was taking place. And my God, it felt like I was on CPS floor because, you know, every other room was a CPS case. You know, and so I was very well aware of what the possibilities were, you know, because if they step in, he wouldn't be released to me.
Correct. And yet he was.
Right.
At the end of that 2-week period, their CPS had every opportunity to do their evaluation. They took that opportunity. All the medical needs were taken care of, and they hand your child back to you, and they say, you know, follow up.
Well, yes, and of course I, you know, had to do follow up with everyone about, you know, Michael's cares and needs that, you know, were going to be looked after once he left the hospital. I did have a discussion with one of the nurses about the in-home nurse that would be coming in the very next day after leaving, you know, the U of M, so they could monitor his weight and, you know, and anything else that they needed. But I specifically asked her if it could be set back a day. So instead of being on Tuesday, it could be on Wednesday.
Was this by phone?
No, this was in person. I was talking with this nurse, and she said that she would see what she could do. She didn't tell me yes or no, you know, but that somebody would be getting back with me and letting me know, you know, if it could be possible. You know, and because of the condition of my home, and I already knew that it was going to be repaired,
So your landlord did commit to a repair.
Right.
And
I had been already previously talking with him about, that it needs to be done, and so he was finally going to be able to do it. And my other thing, too, was getting it set up, somehow not to be there, because I can't be there while the repairs are going on. And, so my parents had already paid for 2 weeks in a hotel,
awesome.
for me to stay. So, it was about a process of getting everything set up, to be able to do what I needed to do.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, so we came home on the 21st that evening, like at 10:30 at night, and the very next morning, CPS is knocking at my door. And, I opened the door and I'm talking to her, and she was like, well, I need to come in and inspect your home and this and that and whatever. And I said, it's not a really good time right now. We just got back and I've got things that I got to take care of. I said, I'm in the process of getting out of this place, because there's repairs that need to be done in the bathroom and plumbing. And she just insisted. It wouldn't take no for an answer. It's going to happen now,
I can just see this government employee, just shoving you aside and walking right past you. It's going to happen that way.
That's pretty much how it happened. So, and she did her assessment, of course.
Taking the pictures there. Look at the mess, look at the mess. Oh, yeah, a big hole in the roof,
Yeah, taking notes. And, so, by the end of this visit, she's telling me, well, I think that you're a good mom, and, I had Michael in my arms at that time, and she's like, I can see that Michael, really loves you and trusts you, so, we're going to give you a chance, and, and not step in. We're going to implement family first. And, which...
For all of how long? They didn't say that this was a 12-hour venture with Family First or whatever.
Right.
Get into that. But,
this is a scary thing,
mm-hmm.
because, you don't really know what's going to take place and happen. These people are already threatening to take away your children. But, there's that chance that, they're going to give you and bring in someone, So... By 3 o'clock that afternoon, Family First, came and was in my home, and, they sat down and formulated a plan, to help me get myself back, on my feet to be able to take care of my children, with everything that was going on,
July 21st.
22nd. This is the 22nd, the very next day.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I'm hopeful, that things are gonna be okay. And then on the 23rd, I get a phone call at 10 o'clock in the morning from Stephanie Smith, who is CPS,
mm-hmm.
who is upset with me because she found out that I had tried to move the in-home nurse from Tuesday to Wednesday. And
that's the deal breaker.
Well, and that's what she had said, but I had already previously talked with her the day before when she was at my home,
mm-hmm.
letting her know of the repairs, and, and she's telling me, well, this is negligence on your part.
One day.
Yeah, this is abuse that you have moved an in-home nurse scheduling from one day to another.
It's almost as rational as moving from a place that's not fit to live in to a place that's a hotel, right? That while the repairs are being done in your home. That's a perfectly rational reason to start in-home servicing at a different place, right?
Right, because I wasn't going to be there for at least 2 weeks. So, I'm hearing this from her, and I'm and she's sitting there telling me, well, we're going to step in and we're going to take your kids, and the other reason too was that there was 2 doctor appointments. I had a follow up with his regular pediatrician, Dr. Bordawala, but there was another U of M appointment that had been scheduled previously before him being in the hospital,
mm-hmm.
And it was at the U of M at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I had Dr. Bordawala at noon. And, there was all kinds of craziness, and, and I had to miss that appointment at the U of M.
Well,
and that was one of the things that she was upset with me about, was that there was a missed appointment. You know, she's sitting there telling me, you blew all your chances. You missed an appointment, and you tried to move the in-home nursing. She was like, that's it in my book.
Well, the U of M is 2.5 hours away, isn't it?
Yes.
And so you can't be there and then be back in 2 hours to another doctor's appointment.
Right.
So you're just keeping a single doctor's appointment with your immediate, physician.
Right. So, Stephanie is telling me that she's going to step in and take my children. But of course, the initial step is that the children get placed with the grandparents. Or with a relative.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was the grandparents.
Which is nonetheless taking your kids away
right.
from you.
Right. So my ex's family is the one that lives here in Michigan. I don't have any family here in Michigan. But, so I was trying to set it up with her. And all the while, I'm crying because this is just blowing my mind that she would take this step against me when I was already trying to be responsible in the first place and doing what was best for me and my children. To
me, that's abuse. It's an abuse of authority. It's for somebody to say, "Hey, we're going to step in. We're going to take over your life. We're taking over your children's lives. And oh, by the way, we'll cut you a little bit of slack. We'll throw you a bone. We'll help you out. We'll give you one more chance." And then to take that away the very next day.
Right.
Yeah, I see it.
So, I got it set up, and, and I told her, I said, well, he still has an appointment with Dr. Bortawala, and she agreed that I could take him there, but that, he needed to go to the grandparents after it was done. And, so I get Michael ready, and we go see Dr. Bortawala, and after the appointment, as I'm walking outside to go back to the car, I get another phone call from her, and she says, well, change the plans. You have court at 3. And
she changed the plans at the last minute. The CPS.
Yes.
Stephanie Smith.
Smith, yes. So here I am just going, okay, I have to go to court for what? I don't understand what's going on here. And
that's track number 1. Track number 2 gets laid down, and the ball is going to start rolling here once you get to the court.
Right.
Which we will have to discuss when we get back. Welcome back to Rico Busters. I'm David Scheid, and I'm here talking with Dani Austin. And the subject for today, child trafficking. Where we left off, we had talked about how CPS comes into a person's home and extracts their kids under color of law. And we want to talk a little bit more about, what other people, what other organizations, other professionals, what their views are, even your husband, what those people's views are of CPS and other government agencies that have the power to do everything from taking the kids to taking parents' income and, taking federal money and things like this in order to facilitate what their program has to offer.
Well, like I said, we were separated, and he had moved out. We were trying to do the best, me and my kids, we're trying to do the best that we could. At this point, he had control over the money, and he was back out working and maintaining an apartment in Pennsylvania out there. He did not want me to go to the state for help, just because of, child support and other things. And so...
Child support, he's not really, I just want to clarify that it would seem that as a mother's best interest is in the welfare of a child. And if you're talking about going to state agencies long before you actually did, It's because, and you didn't, it's because your husband is telling you that he doesn't want you to.
Right, that's correct.
And he doesn't want you to because he doesn't want to have anybody come after him for child support. And he's telling you that he's got expenses, Was he in or out of the home at that time? Had you kicked him?
He wasn't living there, at the time, and he really wanted it to just be kept between us, and
but it's not, because your kids are involved and your kids need some help and you need some help.
Right. And he was helping out periodically, but with us being so behind on everything that was going on, it wasn't enough to keep us afloat and to be able to do what we needed to do. So it was really frustrating, and he, like I said, he was working out in Pennsylvania and he was gone. So, at that point... well,
let's talk a little bit more about what other people are, their views. You said that during the break here that when Family First came in, that they also had a view. This is not third-party information, but this is directly told to you by Family First about... Go ahead.
They were, sympathetic and, and hate to see any family go through this, their thoughts and views were that, they don't agree with how CPS operates and what they do, about keeping the family together. They seen so many cases where, things shouldn't have gone the way that they did, and it was very frustrating to them. So,
and that was told to you directly by the person that has come to you and talked to you from Family First. And which, by the way, as we learned in the last little section here before the break, is that that this only lasted, 24 hours or less than that, this Family First involvement?
Right. Before
this person's CPS, Stephanie Smith, comes in. And let's also go back to the way that that Stephanie Smith had delivered her "we'll give you a last opportunity" at this. That wasn't really a discretionary move by her, because it is in fact the law that says that Family First must be brought in as a last alternative before CPS is granted the ability to do something else. But that's not how she delivered it to you, is it?
No, it was more like, I'm doing you a favor, and it her whole attitude, it was not about helping and being there and preserving the family,
And it wasn't about the law either, from what I'm understanding. That she's portraying herself towards you as this powerful government entity that can do whatever they want, but out of her own graciousness, that she's Am I right?
Yes, you're completely right.
And that's not, a government official should be out there saying that here's what the law says. We are bound by the law. And here's what the law says, that we must bring in this is not our discretion to give you this opportunity. This is what the law says. This is what the legislators have said that needs to be done on behalf of the people themselves and to benefit the people. And obviously she didn't, in less than 24 hours time, she didn't give you the opportunity to even work with Family First.
Right. So, getting back to that, she's calling me at 10 o'clock telling me that, they're going to make their move, but they're going to, try to find relative placement. And, all the while I still needed to take Michael to, his doctor appointment. And I was a wreck. I was crying, and, I was talking with Dr. Bordawalla, and she was asked, she was telling me, how good Michael looked. He looked, better, from what he was going through. And
This is the
wanted
appointment that you made that was 2 hours later than the one that was scheduled in
Right.
U of M, and you couldn't make that one, otherwise you wouldn't be able to get back to your primary physician.
Right. And, you know, she was asking me how things were going with CPS, and I lost it. I started crying. I said, they're taking my children away. And she just had this shocked look on her face, and she said, no, this is not what I wanted. Michael needs to stick with you. You know, he has too many needs, and you're the one that knows how to handle and do everything. She's like, this is not what I wanted. And she offered, you know, to make a phone call to Stephanie Smith, you know, about this. But, you know, they had already made up their mind at what they wanted to do. So, you know, anyways, going on, I step out of the office. I get a phone call from Stephanie Smith, and she's telling me that there is a change of plans and that I need to be at court at 3. And so, again, just...
That was like 2 hours later, if your appointment was around noontime.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, again, I'm hit with something else going, okay, I don't know what's going on. And now I gotta go to court? You know, for what? I don't understand. So I get done from Dr. Bordewalla's office, and I take Michael directly over to the grandparents' house. And I head back to Mount Pleasant to go to my court hearing, and I'm just a mess. You know, I live here in Michigan by myself with no family support, because none of them live here. This is all my ex's family that live here. And I'm sitting here thinking, what do I do? I mean, who do I call? Because I don't know what's going to happen here, and it scared me. So, you know, I make it to the courthouse, and I'm sitting in the waiting room, and this guy walks up to me and introduces himself as Tony Moses, and that he's my court-appointed attorney. And I'm, okay. And he says, okay, we need to take a few minutes to talk.
Now,
so
he didn't know anything, obviously. Go ahead.
No,
but
he didn't. So, you know, we go into this room, and he starts reviewing the case right along with me.
For the first time.
For the first time, and I'm trying to tell him my story about what's gone on, what I've been going through, you know, what I've been trying to do, and, you know, and he's just basically telling me, well, you know, none of that matters now, and, you know, what we got to do is basically just go along with them at this point, you know. And I'm looking at him, and I'm saying, you know, you're supposed to be representing me. You're supposed to be giving me advice as to what, you know, I can do for my case, and you're just telling me that I just need to go along because that's in the best interest of the kids. And
without him knowing anything about you, about him knowing anything about your kids, without him knowing anything about the case other than a quick review of whatever CPS has put in there, and you haven't even had a chance to look at that, right?
Right. So, you know, we get done speaking there for 5-6 minutes, and it's already time to go into court. And anyways, I'm just sitting there, and they're discussing the petition, you know, to be able to take my children, and I'm not understanding everything that's going on. I am in such a daze. For one, that I'm even here at this point going through all of this, well, and not understanding anything that's being taken place.
And I think what's important to understand here is that it's not supposed to play out like this. By the law, this is not supposed to play out like this. You are being placed in this situation by a scheme that, and you didn't know this, you didn't recognize the scheme, and there's a reason why this isn't supposed to happen to you like this. And that is because we have laws, we have Michigan court rules and other things put into place that are supposed to give you due process rights. And you're so overwhelmed here because you've had your due process rights stripped away from you, and by entities that are defying and going against the stuff that they know or should know they're supposed to be doing, and they aren't doing those things. Right. Good example, case in point here, is that Danielle was explain in your own words that you never received any paperwork until after the hearing, and that this hearing was held on the same day of the judge signing, and can you go over a little of that?
Well, like I said, I didn't know anything. I wasn't advised of anything, or,
other
none
than
of that
to roll
was
over.
right. So here I am sitting in court, and they're presenting this petition, to take the children, and I'm just sitting here in disbelief going, this can't happen like this. This just doesn't seem right
and it at
all. And, the hearing took about, 10 minutes. And it was all said and done. And I'm sitting here just...
Said and done, that the kids were out of your hands. They were no longer in your...
Right.
Yes.
And my world is turned upside down, And it wasn't until after, the hearing that I, was handed the paperwork, concerning everything that we went over. And it wasn't until, reviewing the paperwork later, that there was a summons, and
it was the summons that was handed to you, but after the hearing.
But after the hearing.
And go ahead.
And that, it was supposed to be given to me 7 days prior and not 3 minutes before the hearing. And also, too, the petition to have the children removed, from my care and out of my home was, in fact, denied. Because the
At that hearing?
Yes, because the hearing was adjourned for lack of notice to my ex, who was not there.
Okay, so that hearing that was held on we're talking about July 24th, right?
23rd.
Or 23rd.
And Stephanie is looking at me and telling me, okay, you need to go home and you need to gather all of Michael's stuff up. And I was so upset. I've been Michael's caregiver since he was born. I know everything about him, everything. We have barely spent any time apart. He's never spent the night away from me. And anybody that's known me has known that Michael's always been right there by my side. I mean, we have a special connection because we've been through hell and back together in everything. He's my best bud. I'm so close with him, and to think that he's not going to be with me anymore, and my other two as well. I mean, they're taking my life away from me because my kids are my life. That's what I've been doing, and
I don't think you need to say any more, because what we want to do when we come back is we're going to invite Ted Visner back into this conversation here and give you a chance to take a little break, and we'll be right back. You have just heard the first-hand account of what happened to Danielle Austin and the totality of her interactions with Child Protective Services before they acted to forever change her life and the lives of her 3 children. In the next segment, we will be tearing apart the laws and the court rules to show you exactly what makes these people think that they can get away with the foul, evil deeds that they are doing, and what we can do as a people to stop them dead in their tracks. Stay tuned. You definitely don't want to miss what's coming up next.